Welcome to the League of Women Voters Climate Change Preparedness and Resilience. This module will provide a deeper review of principles of climate resilience and examples of long-standing notable programs to jumpstart our area. We will cover some grounding definitions, the principles of resilience and what is a resilience dividend, and some real examples of nearby regions and cities applying the principles of resilience. And will incorporate action ideas at the individual level and for local governments and communities. In general, these action ideas will be part of the everlasting journey towards a common resilient vision, building trust, creating transparent communication and strong leadership, motivating learning, and exercising our imagination to think of a future vision in which we live in better balance with nature. In the journey towards a more resilient and balanced world where humanity lives in greater balance with our earth and nature, these three types of actions are needed: mitigation, resilience, and sustainability. Mitigation for climate reduction of greenhouse gases and hazard mitigation is further along and is being well done with our emergency management systems. Resilience is the less well known and understood. It looks for ways to make systems endure and thrive even in an imbalanced world. It is about getting better than before, not just bouncing back, for the benefit of all citizens, particularly the poor and vulnerable, in good times and bad times. It involves everlasting adaptive learning cycles to solve problems across infrastructure, social, and natural systems, whereas sustainability works towards putting the world into the long-term balance amid the depletion of natural resources. There's more than a decade's worth of documentation on concepts about resilience, the framework, and the principles. The Rockefeller Foundation have done both investment and documentation of these concepts. In particular, here you have the three phases of resilience building and the resilience dividend. The three phases include at its core this everlasting adaptive learning cycles, which is the process of learning after hazard events, particularly the post-disaster analysis documenting what went wrong and the root causes before taking any further actions. Then planning before taking actions by involving communities and neighborhoods that were most affected. The revitalization step means going beyond bouncing forward to create more robust systems, infrastructure that performs to higher expectations, and communities that gain strength, increase their identity, and share vision. Resilience dividend is the return on the resilience investments, whether financial or more qualitative, like in the case of the social dimension, such as reducing inequality and increasing social cohesion. The Rockefeller Foundation commissioned the Arup firm, which is an independent firm with a broad range of technical specialists and think tank that had been supporting resilient projects in 38 countries. They developed this four-dimensional framework to provide a lens to understand the complexity of the cities and the drivers that contribute to their resilience. Although all dimensions are very important, the one that is not being fully utilized is the economic and society dimension, the promoting cohesiveness and engaging communities and ensuring social stability, security, and justice. This requires very strong leadership and strategy that fosters long-term and integrated planning and empowers a broad range of stakeholders. Actions are needed at many levels. Just like the interconnected web of life on Earth, actions can start anywhere and ripple to other places. Networking across these levels provides many benefits and jumpstart communities and regions by sharing frameworks, tools, and training, sharing experience and knowledge, and expertise, as well as financial resources. The good news is that there are many experienced and reputable organizations, even philanthropic foundations, working to build and improve climate resilience around the world. The emphasis is on cities because of the density of population representing higher risk to many people and systems. Here are a list of several global, national, and regional networks. Wisconsin has participation in both national and regional networks. An example here is the Sustainable States Network, and Wisconsin participates via the Green Tier Legacy Communities, which exist to advance practices and stretch limited local government resources, preparing for future and building resilience faster. This is a large global umbrella organization, making cities resilient. It is in its second decade program, resetting their goals for 2030. It's one of the largest global coalitions with 10 organizers. 4 are United Nations entities with expertise in urban resilience, disaster risk reduction, and climate change. The World Bank additionally provides access to funding connections. I will highlight 2 organizations with U.S. membership. The first one is ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, with 6 Wisconsin members. And the second one, Resilient Cities Network, which is the product of the Rockefeller's Foundation pilot, the 100 Resilient Cities. It is now over 1,000 cities globally, and it includes 24 U.S. cities. 90% of the member cities have institutionalized the role of the Chief Resilience Officer. As I mentioned before, climate change impacts do not know boundaries. It affects every fiber of the fabric of our society and communities. This is one of the many reasons why we need to address this intersectionality with vulnerable populations and green affordable housing. The current heightened awareness of social inequities makes this time ripe to incorporate climate resilience. There is a very big gap in resources between the rich and the poor in this country. This is also relevant in Wisconsin. Wisconsin poverty measure statewide is 10.8%, and in our Tri-County area it ranges from 7.6 to 10.9. No matter how prepared we think we are to withstand and respond to a natural hazard or major disruption, the quality of our social cohesion is a major factor in our survival, because it is usually friends, neighbors, colleagues, and even sometimes a stranger who responds first. We need to bridge and close the many divides within our society. Vulnerable populations must be a priority. They are more likely to be hurt by extreme weather events. They are frequently the most affected and all too often not included in decision-making within local governments. Climate justice is a rights-based framework. It advocates for climate mitigation, adaptation, and resilience, but also for social transformation for the collective rights of vulnerable populations. The Mary Robinson Climate Justice Foundation is focused on this and promotes these 7 principles, highlighting in particular ensuring that decisions on climate change are participatory, transparent, and accountable, and the use of effective partnerships to secure climate justice. Climate justice must be front and center when making plans and all decisions related to mitigation and resilience. Generation Z care deeply about racial equity and climate justice. According to this essay by Sarah Jacquet Ray, who is an environmental studies teacher at Humboldt State University in California, says, these young people are just motivated by climate change. They are downright traumatized by it. They care a lot about humans. They flock to environmental studies out of a desire to reconcile humanity's relationship with nature, an awareness that humanity and nature are deeply interconnected, and a genuine love for both. Yet the sense of doom creates anxiety and sense of powerlessness that can immobilize these young people. We cannot afford to lose the energy of these young people and the capacity of joy to imagine a future in greater balance. Here are some ideas in 3 fronts. In behaviors, civic advocacy aims to influence decisions within political, economic, and social institutions. Joining bipartisan organizations like the League of Women Voters and Citizens Climate Lobby. In social responsibility, volunteering with local organizations and nonprofits. At home, performing a green assessment of your home. In lifestyle, practice the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, and even diet. In consumer power, the 4th R, rethinking all decisions through the lens of climate resilience. Buy local, support local food sources, support diverse minority-owned businesses and organizations. In investment power, there are many social environmentally conscious banks and investment funds. Donate to climate resilience, climate justice nonprofits and foundations. Now you will hear from my colleague, Joy Perry.
In the course of our study, we investigated a number of different cities and regions with similarities to ours, and want to tell you about a few of those that we think have notable resilience programs that we can learn from. We found a number of common themes among the plans. First, each had a clearly defined authority that was leading the effort. Also, each had multiple departments or jurisdictions involved, not just a small, very small team, but a broad team with multiple levels of experience and interest. Also, we found that they all placed emphases on, first, equity, justice, and vulnerable populations, on ensuring that there were economic benefits for all, and also on that of increasing the capacities to adapt and be resilient. One excellent example comes from our neighbors to the west, regional planning for the Minneapolis-St. Paul region. This is conducted by an organization called the Metropolitan Council, an organization that covers the entire region you see there, Minneapolis-St. Paul and 7 counties, over 3 million in population. And their slogan is One Vision, One Metropolitan Region. Their plan is called Thrive MSP, Minneapolis-St. Paul 2040. Now, the Metropolitan Council was created to oversee those kinds of resources and infrastructure that cut across all of those lines. So they oversee transit, wastewater treatment and water supply, regional parks, and interestingly, affordable housing. The Thrive 2040 Comprehensive Regional Development Plan focuses on stewardship, prosperity, equity, livability, and sustainability. An important function of the Metro Council is to provide the communities and counties within the metro area with data, lots of data, that can help the communities understand their vulnerabilities. For example, you can see on the left-hand side of this diagram that they collect data about the social network, including statistics such as the percentage that are renters, percentage that are unemployed. They collect data about health, about accessibility, for example, to health insurance, to vehicles. They could collect data about communications, poverty, percentage of with residents of color, and they use that data then to inform the jurisdictions underneath them. On the right-hand side of this diagram, you can see a graph showing the various counties and where they have concerns about, in this instance, with this graph, whether they have extreme health heat hazards that they need to pay attention to, whether they have localized flooding hazards that they should pay attention to. And so this data can really be very valuable for all of those counties to start looking at the vulnerabilities that they have. The data don't just provide a snapshot of current conditions, they also allow the areas to find opportunities. How can they best approach their coming years? For an example here, Ramsey County, where St. Paul is located, and looking at their heat and human vulnerability scores, we can see some obvious patterns in the map on the right. The darker pink and red areas are those where there is considerable human vulnerability in those census tracts. Up in the northern part of the county, there's much less of that we can see. The key takeaways and recommendations from this that the Metro Council have identified for Ramsey County to look at are to focus on disability access and emergency response plans. Also, to look at the heat island mitigation resources, especially in the southern part of the county, where the heat indices and vulnerability scores are highest, and where the overwhelming majority of the human vulnerabilities exist for the county. Also, they recognize that the surface flooding mitigation could be spread throughout the county, focusing on the social network and on the communications. And building stronger social networks, studying community cohesion is important for Ramsey County to reduce the high levels of social network vulnerabilities. An excellent opportunity for Ramsey County to learn from the data collected by the Metro Council. The Thrive 2040 plan provides a number of what they call notable smart solutions for the vulnerabilities that were identified in the course of creating the plan. Two strategies particularly emerged that seem to do it all. They encompass mitigation, adaptation, and resiliency, and also at the same time provide economic and social benefits. Those two strategies were somewhat surprising to me. First, trees. Trees are incredibly important. They have one of the biggest returns on investment toward climate mitigation, adaptation, and community cohesion. Trees mitigate extreme heat, they prevent heat from building up, they mitigate water runoff. They have many benefits, and the number one strategy that they developed was to take care of the urban forest. Also important, stormwater management. The rain that falls in extreme events or in extreme snow melt can quickly overload the stormwater systems. They recommend a combination of engineered systems that mimic natural systems, like mimicking forests, preventing swales, providing rain gardens to slow the flow of water. They also emphasize infrastructure improvements that can help the water stay on site rather than overwhelming the stormwater system. The city of St. Paul lies within the Thrive region. With a population of 308,000, they have also adopted a climate action and resilience action plan of their own in 2019. Goals include, first, reducing their carbon emissions 50% by 2030, only 10 years. Another goal, to be carbon neutral by 2050, 30 years from now. Their plan includes initiatives to mitigate the greenhouse gas emissions, and they also have strategies to reduce vulnerabilities to achieve that equity and resilience that they're looking for. One interesting aspect of their plan is they noted that Xcel Energy, the major energy and electricity utility in the area, has committed to become carbon-free by 2050.
St. Paul's plan has many different aspects. For residential homeowners, they hope to make stricter energy codes for new homes, help owners of existing homes to retrofit their homes for greater efficiency, and switch from carbon-based natural gas to what will eventually be carbon-free electricity for appliances. The commercial and industrial buildings will also see changes and improvements, including stronger green building standards, improved efficiency, and energy retrofits for buildings. The goal in transportation sector is to reduce carbon emissions with a comprehensive action in land use, types of transportation, increased transit, for example, and switching to different fuels, such as renewable natural gas, RNG, which is produced by the digesters of livestock waste currently. And the waste and water sectors also are addressed with goals to eliminate 80% of waste volume going into landfill and also safeguarding water sources. Neighboring Minneapolis also has a recent comprehensive plan which addresses climate change resilience. Among the 14 goals of their plan are a focus on equity, living wage jobs, health and safety, also on a clean environment, and finally with a climate change resilience plan by which they hope to achieve an 80% reduction in greenhouse gases by the year 2050. Finally, closer to home, Dane County, Wisconsin has a brand new 2020, what they call Climate Action Plan. The overall goal of their plan is to sharply reduce greenhouse gas emissions and move toward what they call deep decarbonization. They have 6 guiding principles. First, a focus again, first on equity and justice, on economic benefits, health benefits, resiliency and security, and bridging the urban and rural divide like we may see in our area. And finally, that of providing ecosystem benefits. Dane County's plan provides 100 different actions to decrease greenhouse gases across all sectors. Among them, to increase efficiency of energy and transportation, especially in those areas where most vulnerable populations are located, to provide voluntary guidelines for highly efficient buildings. In the transportation sector, owners will be encouraged and incentivized to use electric and renewable natural gas vehicles and to reduce the miles that they drive. Agriculture and forestry are recognized as being important for their ability to store carbon in long-lived trees and in the soil. Increasing renewable energy is a key. Dane County's goals are for solar to provide 1/3 and wind 1/2 of electricity by 2030, only 10 years. The plan provides strategies for improving water use and efficiency in residences and encourages rainwater collection. The plan outlines ways to achieve what's known as a circular economy, where the wastes of one business are used as resources or inputs for another. In this model, there's no such thing as waste, only resources. And finally, the plan outlines solutions for financing clean energy projects. Next, my colleague Ligia Rivera will wrap up this topic.
Here's a more detailed summary of actions at the short term, mid-term, and long term. Starting with reaffirming Phase 1 position to incorporate climate resilience into local government decisions. and advocating for the creation of a regional resilience team with a climate resilience officer. In the midterm, encourage membership of one or more global, national, regional organizations, which opens many doors to jumpstart our efforts. Advocating for social equity, advocating to use communication expertise at all stages to increase trust and increase participation among the public and vulnerable populations. In the long term, advocate for institutionalizing resilience governance with a coherence process that includes data gathering and progress measurements towards the resilient goals. And of course, finally, securing sustainable funding streams for consistency of purpose to implement our vision goals. Sonia Sotomayor said this very inspirational phrase, as you discover what strengths you can draw from your community in this world from which it stands apart, look outward as well as inward, build bridges instead of walls. This is a collection of the most useful resources we use for this presentation. More educational modules in this series from the Climate Change Preparedness and Resilience Study are available in the League of Women Voters website. Thank you for your attention.